and your back to
For both those things.
Okay, so I've made 3 marks. I've marked C7.
No.
I very crookedly marked 15 centimeters, and I marked a line between the PSISs, okay? So with inclinometers, we're going to always use 2 inclinometers. The top one is going to measure the overall motion, and the bottom one is going to measure pelvic and hip motion, and we're always going to subtract the bottom one from the top one. Now, because we're doing this subtraction, you wouldn't need to necessarily take the person's shoes off because we are compensating for what's happening in the lower extremities. Because you always want to look at quality of motion, I would always have someone take their shoes off when they're doing motion. I started to have her take her shoes off, and then I'm like, oh, but she doesn't have to take her shoes off, so I had to leave them on. But for quality of motion, you would always want to have the person take their shoes off. Now, these are simply inclinometers.
Nice close up.
Okay? And so all it's doing is telling you what's straight north. Or not north, I shouldn't even say that. Vertical. Okay? So as this turns, that needle moves. Okay? It will always be vertical. So we're just going to read that, and these are in degrees. So I'm going to take this stool. So we can measure both lumbar flexion and extension and torso flexion and extension depending on where we put our inclinometers. So if I want, do you feel like you have enough room, or are you going to bunk your head on there? Okay, all right, because head bunking is like paperwork I don't want today. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put 1 inclinometer here, and then what I can do is zero that out and make that 0 for her, even though. So what I've done is there's a little white line here on the inclinometer, okay? I'm lining that little white line up with the line that I drew, okay? These pegs, you can just loosen them and put them wherever you want, okay? I do want them even. So, and then, Emily, no offense, she has a little bit of a forward head, and so I have to put her inclinometer like this, but do you see now it's at 0, okay? And I can just do that by turning that knob to make that 0. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom one. So if we're going to measure, for both of them, the bottom one is always going to be in the same place, and that's going to be lining up that white line right on that line that I had for the PSISs. Now the tricky part is not burying those 2 probes into the person's skin as you're trying to turn this, because generally that doesn't feel very nice. Are you doing okay? Mm-hmm. Thank goodness for my long arms. Okay, so we're still at 0. Now we're at 0. Okay, go ahead and bend forward and touch your toes. And can you bend your head down just a little? There you go. Good. So this one is, oh my gosh, at 58, and this one is at 130. Go ahead and come up. 136. Jimmy. 136 minus.
Say both the numbers again. 136 and what?
48. And 48.
So 92.
Okay.
Human calculator.
So you're going to do that subtraction. So I'm subtracting the bottom one from the top one. I would do the same thing for torso extension. So if I had you, so they should in theory, if you're standing the same way, we'll know how consistent your posture is. Go ahead and put your hands on your hips. The bottom on the top. Now go ahead and arch your back backwards as far as you can. Okay. So, okay, come on back up. And so she's at 78. Oh, and I missed this one.
You have to read it while it's on there, right?
Yeah, you have to read these while they're on, because as soon as you pull them off, they've changed their angle. Yeah. Okay, so you have to read those while they're on. If I wanted to measure lumbar motions, I would do the same thing, but I would put them at that 15 centimeter proximal line and then the bottom line. You can see that for extension, that's going to be a problem if I line these up right on top of one another. So what you're going to do is just stagger them so that as she goes back, this goes over that one. okay? So for lateral flexion, I'm gonna have to take a step forward for me, please. So for lateral flexion, you're now going to put them on your patient this way, okay, this way, flat, instead of on your spine like this. And you need to have them perpendicular to the floor. So you can't, so I'll just show you up here. You can't put it at an angle like that. You need to keep it, because if you do this, it may not be free to move. So you want to make sure that it always stays vertical. And then here what you're going to do is put the axis of the inclinometer right over that spot. So if I wanted to measure lumbar lateral flexion, I would have those at 0. Okay, and I'm going to have you laterally flex to the left. Why not? So she's at 36 on the top one and at 5 on the bottom one. Okay, and come on back up. I still couldn't do that one. So you're still getting movement of the pelvis when she does that, so that's why we're still subtracting that bottom number, okay? We have four of these and 2 that are liquid inclinometers. So only 3 pairs can practice this at a time.